Hello, everyone. As always, we'll give it a little time here, Rennie, to get everyone settled in. I love how we coordinated outfits last minute here.
Absolutely. Go New York, go New York, go.
Let's go. We're almost here. One more day.
Yep.
All right. As people start getting in, I guess I'll just start kicking us off the housekeeping stuff. So, welcome to June's Tariff Tea. It should maybe be like an iced tea because it's summertime coming, the summer edition, right? And I'd say in this blend we have, of course, we have tariff refunds, we have court rulings, we have new tariff authorities, appeals. So a real nice mix for you all today. So as everyone kind of continues to trickle in and log on, as always, just a quick pause here to review the disclaimer. So everything we're covering today is meant to inform. It's not advice. This is not legal guidance. And as we know, in this tariff environment where really the only thing that's guaranteed is there's a lot of changes, your specific facts matter. So always please validate decisions with your internal or external advisors. And so now that we have that taken care of, here we go. So I'm Nunzio De Filippis. I'm the co-CEO of CargoTrans. I'm here joined by Rennie Alston. We're both licensed customs brokers. And together today, we will break down what's hot in terms of hot headlines in the world of tariffs and trade. We'll share a little bit of what we call our CargoTrans Insider Brew. We'll walk through today's strategy spotlight, which is kind of around the section 301 and kind of what's coming next. And as always, please share your questions and answers questions throughout the sessions, and we'll try to answer as many as we can at the end. If we don't get to your question specifically, we will get back to you at a later time. So let's get right into it, Rainey. Right. So last month, I attended the CBP's webinar, nice, cleverly called "Don't Lose Your Cape." So I nod to the CBP marketing team there. And the main theme of the webinar was really focused on preventing fraud. As you can imagine, when you have 167 billion, you're going to have some fraud stuff going on, people trying to access refunds. But where I wanted and where I kind of noted, there was a brief kind of pivot in the conversation in the webinar worth noting. CBP, they mentioned that there are high risk, and I kind of quote, high risk claims that are subject to, personal review, CBP personal review. And they didn't really, kind of share too much in terms of how do they qualify what's high risk. But Rennie, since they didn't elaborate, what do how do you think, what does that mean? What does high risk mean? What's your take?
So, yeah, I agree. And the connotation of high risk, without their definition, right, is subject to interpretation. You're absolutely correct. However, the existence of high risk category import entries have already been defined by customs when they talk about restricted merchandise imports. For example, articles coming into the United States that have jurisdiction over several government agencies, partnering government agencies like FDA, USDA, and customs at the same time. There's an elevated risk to those entries, which is why the bonding requirements are 3 times the value instead of just the value plus the actual duties. So that is one category. But in addition to that, What they also mentioned in that presentation was the platform associated with, the False Claims Act, right? And submission of information that was considered to be false data linked to a refund request. To me, that represents an elevated risk, right? Of, it could be a country of origin, it could be a value, it could be a piece count discrepancy that is normally reviewed with liquidation that now is compounded because it's not just liquidation, it's liquidation and a refund request. So I think all of that goes into their definition of what risk is, to utilize that as a platform to kind of control the pace of the refunds.
Yeah, yeah, and actually, that's a good call out because the CBP actually they kind of spotlighted that attestation again, that ticker, and
Yep.
they reiterated during that webinar saying that whoever the filer of the claim is, you're affirming, right, the information is true, accurate, and they're really kind of targeting that valuation, origin, classification that we're talking about. Um,
Correct.
Moving on, right? We also have kind of an update that came out of the CIT on the 22nd, right, where their CAPE refunds are now reaching about $30 billion that are in kind of the pipeline to get back to importers, bank accounts. There's been more than 157,000 declarations, but there's still a good number that are failing validation, about 31%, right? And so what's happening, or kind of the top three issues, is sort of what you're talking about, even in those like false mismatches, right? Where importer of record is a mismatch. Sometimes what we're seeing too is during the course of just business in general, right? There's mergers and acquisitions, you changing entities and who's the importer of record. So those type of details are causing some rejections. There's a lot that are pushing, trying to get refunds for entries that are not eligible in phase one. So that's causing mismatches and including data quality in general, right? Like entry numbers being off, missing fields. So
Yep.
takeaway, you need to audit your data, make sure it's clean before filing, so that you get past this kind of first stage, right?
Yeah.
Right. So moving on, right? The more tariff uncertainty, where we saw last month that Section 122, that global 10%, was ruled illegal through the CIT. Then a few days later, the Federal Circuit said, no, we're going to keep these in effect, right? We're going to keep the 10% while we figure this out. We've heard this story. We kind of seen this before, right?
Yep.
So what now, right? What should importers be doing, regarding these 122s?
Yeah. Well, along the same lines of the path that we've just taken, right, to get to this point with IEPA, obviously record retention is critical to make sure that you're able to, again, identify entries that have been processed since the 24th of February, right? Identify the exact amount of 122 tariffs that you've paid on this particular platform. And then be ready to, again, prepare a filing very similar to what we have with CAPE. If this rolls out in the same way, I foresee that it will be challenged by the administration. It will then go for, again, an appeals court ruling and then possibly back to the Supreme Court. And we will be back in this situation again. And Customs will say, well, we have a platform that could process the refunds. It's called CAPE. And it will again simply start calculating through the same audit verification that was done with IEPA. It will do the same thing for the Section 122.
Yeah, and oh, by the way, we also have to mention, right, that last week, the head of the USTR, Jameson Greer, he kind of said, "Hey, there's nothing in this 122 statute that doesn't say like we can't just, take another shot at it, like redo it again, and
Right.
issue it after the July 24th." So obviously both sides kind of just swinging back and forth, so something that we certainly should be paying attention to. Then moving on, we have finally a little bit of a tariff relief, right? Where Taiwan kind of reached a 232 renegotiation, pretty sweet deal in terms of like have this 15% cap now on some auto parts and wood products. So it kind of works similar to the way the EU 50% IEPA, where it's like if you're at six,
Yep.
the max that you can go is a 15. And there's also some complete relief on select steel, aluminum derivatives, and civil aircraft parts. But just how did Taiwan, I guess, negotiate such a sweet deal?
They learned, they learned from, prior deals. They know that there's an appetite for the administration to socialize, trade deals just under that particular category. And they touched a point that said, listen, we can't afford as a nation in their region, right, to pay these 25 and up to 50% tariffs on some of these goods, right? Not talking about derivatives only, but to include products like autos and wood products that represent a major, portion of their product for export. So, they targeted it and said, hey, can we reach this? And I think the administration embraced that as a win, right?
Yep.
And said,
Yep.
look what we've done, right?
Yep.
And
And they
here
and
we
they
are.
also, I don't know if you said, they also obviously a part of it is they committed to $500 billion of investment in kind of IT infrastructure, AI.
Exactly.
So,
Yep.
that
Yep.
that also helps too, right? So I guess like the message to the rest of the world is you got to bring some dollar bills back here to the US in some
Right.
shape or
Right.
form, right? If you want a tariff
At
deal.
least in a promissory note, right?
Right, right.
Um, for the immediate time frame, right? In order to get this realization. So,
Yeah. And so, like all of every time we're doing these webinars, like we can never really, put the bow on the presentation until like 5 seconds before. So, and here's a case in point, right? So, just yesterday, we've got new news of a Section 232 update where there's now this new 85% US metal content rule, which is down from, I think it was previously at 95%. And so
correct.
if you qualify, now you're only paying your 10% 232 tariffs instead of the 25%. And there's also some bundled kind of product specific breaks in there, like for forklifts, bulldozers, HVAC equipment, where they're giving them a 15% tariff rate. If you didn't qualify for any of those, then you still have to pay the 25%. And then you have kind of these exclusions for Canada and Mexico. So if you want more details on that, I did post on LinkedIn this morning where you can kind of get the exact report where that's coming out from. So moving on to what we call our insider brew, and this is really where we get into what's going on in the trenches. So um, as we know, refund filings, they were really top priority last month for the trade community, right? I don't think we had an hour that passed, Rennie, without a meeting, without mentioning or talking about trade, tariff refunds. And then there were some, right, when they first heard this news, they kind of like anxious importers, right, rush their filings and just drop the CSV entry numbers in there right away. And some of their anxieties were like, what if the money runs out? What if the administration changes their mind, or comes up with an appeal? So from what we're seeing is some of these rush filings, right? They're inadvertently causing additional exposure, right, or additional bills. And I guess let me start, Rennie, right, with CAPE, right? CAPE is the Consolidated Administration and Processing of Entries, right? It's
Right.
it's not it's not just tariff refunds. It's an audit tool, right? So,
Right.
which is why we have so many entries under review. So you have like maybe just some examples to share on where we've seen maybe some additional bills that were sent as due to a response to a CAPE claim.
Sure. And again, there are various, as you noted, examples, but a snapshot would be taking into consideration that customs also was in a position when they received instructions on Truth Social, and just as the CSMS messages were being tasked to be rolled out, to implement the ability to accept entries, right, without having ample time to put in filters for entry rejections at the time of submission. So it's very possible, and it's very common, that customs was accepting information that may have errors on it. And one example would be if you were submitting an IEPA tariff that was also combined with a 232 tariff or a China 301 tariff. You may have applied or misapplied the values for each individual harmonized number incorrectly, though your total value was submitted accurately. So the delineation of what you paid could have resulted in either an underpayment of IEPA or other duties, or an overpayment of IEPA or other duties or tariffs. And that was very common due to the configuration of how you put in hierarchical order the entry declaration. Things that were put in place, like a country of origin, that may have been misapplied against a country of export, right? Because of the information that was received in the inverted input of information. When you have multiple lines, it's pretty common that there could have been a either clerical error or systems error. And all errors are not importer or broker related. There are a lot of self-correct scenarios that customs system just wasn't built to accept this information. Much less be able to refund it. So that's where some of these rejections are coming to light.
Yeah, that's a good point. Now, that's what I've been sharing with, anyone that's getting those rejections. CBP is not always right. You need to kind of dig through, look through these, kind of go back and do your reviews to make sure that what they're saying is accurate and correct, because there was so much volatility, there was so many changes that, everyone involved in the trade, there was plenty of room for error for sure during that time. So
Absolutely. And,
yeah.
and customs took the position that, hey, since you're requesting a refund, I just noticed that you owe me money. So I'll tell you what, instead of giving you a refund check, why don't you send me what
Yeah.
you owed me at the time of entry? And we'll go from there. So instead of a check, you're getting a bill.
Yeah. That's nice egg on your face. So there you go.
Right.
So for those that are getting monies back, right? We've noticed that it's not clean, right? Meaning it doesn't mean if you put in a claim for 100,000 that all of a sudden you're getting 100,000 just dropped in. It might be 28,526 and 32 cents, that's coming in today. So make sure, right, the message is that you're monitoring and reconciling your refunds. And these are some reports, the REV 603 and 613, that can help monitor those or find refunds that might be sitting and didn't have an ACH to push through, that you can run through
Yep.
ACE. But something else kind of came up interesting recently through our insider brew, right, where importers also need to monitor 4811s. You want to just kind of like share a little bit around that?
Sure. So 4811 has been here for quite some time. This is not an IEPA specific process. It is an authorization by an importer to allow another party to collect refunds from customs. Most notably, this is a common practice where importers assign 4811 rights to the broker of record, very common in the express consignment field, right? So just using as an example FedEx and not singling them out. But FedEx assigns themselves with this 4811 through authorization from the importer, because often as the broker of record, they are processing entries and laying out duty on behalf of the importer. And they wanted to be in a position that if there was an error with that original entry filing, that, most importers don't want to pay for the services of an error. So FedEx in this particular situation would be able to collect the refund directly from customs. Now,
Makes
that
sense.
being in place on the date of the entry, here comes CAPE. Now, a CAPE entry is filed by the importer, and customs reviews that refund, qualifies for a refund, and issues a payment. Because of 4811 was linked to the original entry, the refunds are going to FedEx, not to the importer's account.
Right.
So
Or
that's
any
why
other
it's
broker for
yeah,
that matter.
or
You
any
know,
other
yeah,
broker,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
So that's why it's important if you are an importer with knowledge, because again, we've seen importers they didn't even realize because they weren't the person or party in their organization to issue this, but the broker did not do this alone, right? This was something that was in place. This is not a fraudulent act. You just need to again monitor the situation with the broker and say, hey, what is the payment cycle once you receive this? And it's identified by entry number. So it's not like they get a bulk. It's just that certain platforms get millions and millions of dollars a day. And that may take time siphoning out, how they're going to distribute that. So to your earlier point, monitor that 603 and 613 reports so that you could see the activity because it's still issued in your name as an importer, and it's going to be in your ACE report. It's just being, sent to
Not in your
whoever
not in
the
your bank account,
4811. Right,
basically. Yeah.
exactly.
And so now, right now comes the interesting part. Now starts this tug of war, right, with the cash, and as you can see, the cash and the rope tug of war in the picture depicted here. So pretty interesting news that came out on Friday, where the administration basically is saying that they're going to appeal the IEPA refunds for entries that are in final status, right? And so CBP told the CIT that they actually don't even have the legal authority to reliquidate these entries for refunds. So the Supreme Court, right, ruling when it first came out against IEPA, the thought process was protest, right? Since we didn't know CAPE was happening and the details of CAPE. Then CAPE rolls out, and we learned protest can actually hamper, right, your CAPE submissions. So then it was kind of like, oh, hold off. If you're in phase one, do the phase one, go through CAPE first. And now this. So now we're on more protests. I guess, so are we back to that strategy?
Yeah, I mean, we're in a state of uncertainty, but we can't afford to do nothing. So if you are in a position where you have final status liquidation entries, meaning the closeout is approaching that 180-day period where your protest based on existing rules and regulations would expire, then yeah, I am making the recommendation as a insurance safeguard, right? Go ahead and file a protest if you are nearing that particular cutoff, because we don't know what the hearing on June 9th is going to uncover. We don't know what stays are going to be lifted. We don't know what the appeal process is going to be. And I, suspect that the administration is interested in slowing down the process of these payments. And at again, the risk of moving outside the scope of your ability to protest, I would reserve that right.
Yep. And so now the tug of war, right, between the CIT and CBP, it's about to get real, Rennie, right? Because
Yep, yep.
because Judge Eaton, right, just ordered the CBP Commissioner Rodney Scott to the CIT, unprecedented, I believe, right? Like, what is this all about?
So, the position of the CIT was that the process of CAPE is taking too long. That the original decision of the Supreme Court, as you noted earlier, ruled IEPA unconstitutional. First thing CIT said is to Customs, pay the money back immediately, everything, right? And Customs came back and said, nope, we have to go through a process of audit and review and verification to protect the financial interest of the government. And here is this CAPE program. And look how well we are doing it. And you saw the socialization from Customs. Here's what we did in week one. Here's what we're doing, right? right? And the CIT has now said, okay, I'm not impressed with your, socialization on how good this program is going to you. Because to the trade, when you created phase one and phase two, when you decided new rules to the game that you're not going to adhere to already liquidated informal entries, that you're going to segregate reconciliation entries, that you are going to define open entries, and you're going to shelve all that until a phase two without a date of implementation that advantage customs, right?
Right, right.
That the trade, the stay was put in place because customs said that there would be a reasonable plan for the execution of the refunds that would be timely and within reason. And the CIT is challenging that now. And you're right, it is unprecedented because the CIT says, I don't want to hear from a deputy. I don't want to hear from,
Yeah.
anyone who has been socializing these things in the past. I don't want to hear from an attorney. I want to hear from the commissioner of customs on exactly what is the plan, the execution, and why we can't move forward. And I believe that the reason they are going there is to cut down on the amount of time it will take for the CIT to issue their next action, which could be a lifting of the stay. And the lifting of the stay would go back to that immediate refund request, right? So they are giving customs an opportunity, and this did not fall favorably upon the administration, who said that's crazy. You can't do that. But we'll see. The target date is June 9th. So a lot more to talk about in our next
Interesting.
tea.
All right. All right. So we got 3 minutes. We're gonna do this kind of
Yep.
rapid fire for this last
Sure.
strategy spotlight here.
Yep.
And as we can see in the picture, by the way, quick shout out to the marketing team. Like the pictures are fired this on this go around.
Excellent.
So the
Val's
other
a
shoe,
three-point shooter.
yeah, the other shoe is about to drop. And so everyone's been talking about, as we've been talking about, like refunds, and by the other shoe, we're really talking about the USTR and their kind of Section 301 investigations. And that's why, if the header here for our spotlight in this month is don't treat the refunds as cash. And I also have brought out my T-shirt here, my be careful or you'll get listed on our tariff refund list. And so last month we had Vietnam that was on the hot seat, right, due to special investigation around IP. And again, just yesterday came out, Brazil is now on a list, and over concerns of digital trade, IP, anti-corruption enforcement, ethanol market access. And so as a result, the USTR is proposing 25% tariffs on Brazil origin goods, while maybe exempting some that are subject to 232 already. And so we have now public comments due July 1st. There's going to be a hearing schedule, the same, typical what we've seen with kind of like 301s. And then we have these two kind of broader, right, investigations on one focused on industrial overcapacity, right? And there's China, Vietnam, Mexico, EU, and a bunch of different sectors being hit. And then we have the forced labor investigations, which is like 99% of imports. So, right, is 301s, is this kind of the tool that the administration is going to use to reenact the previous IEEPA tariffs?
Yes, yes, tariffs are here to stay, and they will find a mechanism that has a proven track record. And since 2018, right, what we used to call China 301, we are now going to call Global 301. So this is their plan forward for tariffs.
Got it. So I know that was a little faster than we wanted to, but I'm sure we'll have plenty to talk about. And if anything, we know like the last 30 days, has basically taught us that the volatility is going to continue. I think the second half of the year, we're going to start to see a lot of these tariffs come back on. Our goal here is just to continue to share, keep everyone updated. Apologies if we couldn't get to your Q&A, but anything that has been collected, we will get back to you as soon as we can. Thank you all, and quick shout out. Let's go, Knicks.
Let's go. Let's go.